Hello, my name is Olivia Huffman, and I'm part of the P20 Motivation and Learning Lab here at the University of Kentucky. My co-authors on this project are Kayla Ford and Dr. Ellen Usher. Today I want to talk to you about the student-athlete experience during COVID-19. To do that, I want to start by telling you that I myself am a student-athlete. You can see me here. This picture was taken last week at the 2021 SEC Swimming and Dive Championships. The University of Kentucky swim and dive team, my team, won gold for the first time in school history. I was a part of the history making and it was amazing. But it also required many sacrifices of my physical and mental health to win a championship during COVID-19. And that's in addition to the stress and work that all students, athletes or not, face. COVID-19 restrictions and changes to competition and practice schedules add an additional layer in stress and uncertainty for student athletes. For example, early in the spring of 2020, NCAA championships or division championships for multiple sports were canceled or postponed. I wanted to better understand how COVID-19 was influencing student athletes' physical and mental health, as well as their academic performance. I situated this study in Bandura's social cognitive theory, which suggests that environmental factors like a global pandemic, personal factors like being a student athlete, and behaviors like academic performance all influence and are influenced by each other. So, what do we know about student athletes' physical and mental health during COVID? Some studies have investigated student athlete mental health and coping during COVID-19. Not to our surprise, student athletes reported uncertainty about resources and athletic opportunities. This left students feeling unmotivated, strained, and helpless regarding their academic and athletic tasks. Specifically, male and upperclassmen student athletes reported experiencing more difficulties handling their stress compared to other student athletes. Building off previous literature, suggests that all students may have negative physical and mental health outcomes when under immense stress. Building off prior studies, we wanted to specifically consider Division I athletes' academic and health experiences during COVID-19, looking closely at gender and class differences like those uncovered in Bullard's study. Our study adds to the literature as we bring a Division I and qualitative perspective that goes deeper into understanding why student athletes might be struggling. We expect to find similar findings with gender and class level and positive relationships between health and academic outcomes. Therefore, the purpose of our study was to investigate the physical and mental health and overall educational experiences reported by student athletes at a large land-grant Division I university in the context of COVID-19. To aim at this, we asked three primary research questions. First, we wanted to know, how do student athletes rate their physical and mental health? Do ratings differ by gender or class? Second, how is athletes' health related to their class performance? And third, how has COVID-19 affected student athletes' learning experiences? Students from a Division I university were invited to complete an extensive survey via their learning course management system. Around 6,000 students completed this survey, and of those students, 178 were student athletes who were included in this study. For this study, we will only use 4 items administered at the end of the fall 2020 semester. You can see here the breakdown of gender and class level. Because of our sample size, we grouped freshmen and sophomores together as underclassmen, and junior and seniors were grouped together as upperclassmen. Students responded to 2 items regarding their health, that is, one for physical and mental health, using a 5-point Likert-like response format from terrible to excellence. We also obtained students' GPA from university records. Then student athletes had the opportunity to respond to 2 open-ended questions. One item focused on how students' health had impacted their class performance, and the other was focused on how COVID had affected their ability to learn this semester. To address research question 1, we used descriptive statistics. For mental health, which is seen in green, we found on average, student athletes reported 3.4 or fair to good range. For physical health, which is seen in yellow, we found an average of 4.2 or good to excellent. This seems like student athletes are rating themselves fair to excellent, which sounds like they are doing okay physically and mentally, but what are student athletes saying about their physical and mental health and their class performance? Using our qualitative data, we pulled quotes from student athletes who rated themselves in each of these categories. Using our survey questions, feel free to comment on how your physical or mental health may have affected your performance in your classes. We found that some student athletes may be facing challenges. A student who rated themselves in physical and mental health as terrible said their mental health impacted them extremely negatively due to motivation and ability to complete work. Student athletes who rated their health items in the poor category said that their grades were lower due to being fatigued or stressed and not getting work done. Student athletes in the fair category also said they lacked motivation. And even though student athletes rated their health items as good, they still suggested they were sick a lot during the fall semester. Lastly, those who rated their health in the excellent category still said that because they tested positive for COVID-19, their classes became more difficult. So we next wanted to consider possible gender differences in student athletes' physical and mental health ratings. Using mean different t-test, we investigated gender differences and how each perceived their physical and mental health. We did not find any significant differences for physical health by gender, but for mental health, we did find significant differences, with women student athletes reporting, on average, lower levels of mental health than their male counterparts. This finding contradicts Bullard's study that men would report lower levels, which shows inconsistency in the literature. Again, using mean difference t-test, we investigated class level differences and how each perceived their physical and mental health. We found no significant differences for physical health or mental health. Although our findings were non-significant, this general trend supports Bullard's study that upperclassmen report slightly lower levels of physical and mental health compared to lowerclassmen. We next sought to answer research question 2 by considering the relationship between student athletes' mental and physical health and their academic performance, which we measured using their fall 2020 GPA. First, we found that student athletes' mental and physical health were moderately correlated with each other. And next, we expected to see a relationship between the health items and GPA at the end of the fall semester, but this was not the case. There were no significant relationships between the health items and GPA. Research question 3 addressed how do student athletes describe COVID-19 affecting their class performance. 3 researchers familiar with this study, including myself, coded each open-ended response in Excel, and using inductive coding, we established a coding scheme and coded 3 items to make sure that we had inter-rater reliability between the 3 of us. We found that responses to both items had similar responses, so the same code list was used for each qualitative questions, which you saw earlier. At this stage, 19 responses were deemed uninterpretable and removed from further analysis. Although 11 themes emerged, for the sake of time, we are only going to highlight the top 4 codes. Some responses got multiple codes. After we tallied the number of codes used, then divided that number by the total number of codes assigned, we found that 4 themes seemed to occur the most often. 8% of student athletes said that reported struggling with their motivation to learn. 10% of student athletes had trouble with their self-regulation skills. 12% of student athletes perceived aspects of their learning to be more difficult. And finally, 38% of student athletes said that course modality, mostly being online, negatively impacted their ability to learn. So students in this category reported not wanting to learn or just felt less motivated towards school. For self-regulation, student athletes reported it was harder to stay focused due to being confined to a dorm room or failed to get work done in a timely manner, allowing it to pile up. For those who said learning was more difficult, they often indicated that online learning is more difficult than in person. For example, this student athlete said they found in-person learning easier compared to online learning. Secondly, student athletes reported that it was more difficult to ask questions or have a normal learning experience. Finally, 38% of codes assigned indicated that a change in modality had negatively impacted their learning. For example, student athletes said online sucks. Another said that online learning is not ideal and not mentally or physically sustainable. So going back to the point of this picture even being in the presentation, grades may not be a great proxy for students' well-being and vice versa. While student athletes might experience great amounts of stress or difficulty in their learning, in their performance academically and athletically, they may not be impacted as much as research suggests. You may have thought this presentation was well put together, but I can tell you the amount of stress and effort to produce this presentation took away from my sleep, eating, and physical exercise. Yet, I was still able to contribute to winning an SEC championship and conduct research in a short time frame during the pandemic. And this is applicable outside the context of COVID-19 because according to social cognitive framework, the interchangeable relationship between one's environment, personal factors, and behaviors are constantly changing our stress levels, motivation, or performance. Although we were surprised by our findings, we were pleased to see that student athletes seemed to be coping well with the pandemic. However, many reported feeling unmotivated, struggling with self-regulation, and perceived difficulty with the new modality. Athletic departments might offer services related to these student athletes who indicate they are struggling with the new modality and consider in-person classes when safe to do so. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please join us at our Q&A on Saturday. Thank you.